We are going to explore how the work of the East African Hub can amplify the effects of regulators in achieving improved graduate employability for labor force growth, enterprise, and new business formation. And we have got experts in this area. Thank you very much. I want to give this opportunity to the first speaker.
Professor Good, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I come from Inter-University Council for East Africa, which is responsible for supporting quality assurance in the region. Today's discussion is like how we started with the discussion about quality assurance in the region. All professors who are here remember universities who are doing their efforts to assure quality at different levels. Until such time when it was realized that we need to have coordination. We need to have some regulation on how we do business. I heard from this morning's discussion that people or universities have started various initiatives to support employability. And I've not heard the discussion about how we perceive employability itself. What is it that we're talking about? Are we perceiving employability the same way as the employers? Do we have different definition and perspectives on employment? I don't know. But more important is that our efforts are not coordinated. Each one of us is coming to a meeting like this one, and they introduce something. So I think it is high time for regulators to intervene. And the role of regulators here is to support universities to develop frameworks and policies for employability. I'm saying so because whatever we are doing now, the numbers that we are graduating is not even enough for Africa. If you look at the production at the lower level, primary, secondary education, the numbers are quite high. And our enrollment rate is around 9.4% compared to the global average of 38%. So we are not only dealing with the small numbers, even the small numbers we are doing are not even employable. So we have a challenge to deal with educating the numbers that is required for transforming economy in Africa, but at the same time grappling with the ability for those graduates to be able to contribute to the economy. And I'm talking about contribute to the economy, I'm not talking about seeking jobs, but rather be effective in delivering the economy. So that's one area that I want to contribute. The second thing which I think is important is the world of work is changing very rapidly. And we had discussion about the world of work today. You stay for 4 years program, and at the end of the day, you come out with the skills which are not required by the labor market. The graduates of today are expected to do the following. First, they need to be dynamic, adaptable to the changing world of work. So our training should orient graduates to be able to adapt to changes. That's number one. Number two, graduates should be able to learn continuously from graduation. They need to accept retooling and appreciate that the world is actually changing. But more important is that graduates are expected to change jobs. We are living in the time when you do work for 2 years and you shift to another job. We don't work for life in one institution. And therefore, universities should be able to support that university graduates be able to shift from one job to another. And the other last thing, which before I let other people speak, is about accountability. This week, I'm going to take my daughter to a medical school. I'll be paying around $5,000 per year. So for a medical school in Tanzania, this lady will stay there for 5 years. That means it will be $25,000. Immediately as she graduates, I need to recover that money. As a point of accountability, I need to recover that money. But if this lady is not going to be employed because of two things. First, maybe this lady is not able to handle a spreadsheet of data from disease surveillance, for example. What if this student is not able to do budgeting, simple budgeting for a department? What if this lady is not able to manage a department of 10 people? And therefore, this lady is not going to be employed. And therefore, my money is going to be lost just because the university in Tanzania is not able to do medical profession, at the same time employability skills. So we need to incorporate that, and this must be regulated. We must be guided. Remember, those who are coming from Uganda and other places, The Interuniversity Council for East Africa is creating policies and instruments for quality assurance. They are used, they are domesticated in university. Why don't you have instruments and the policies for employability and let them be uniform and domesticated in our university? And these are issues that need to come out of this discussion. Thank you. For now, I'll stop here.
I work from the Higher Education Council in Rwanda. First of all, I would like to appreciate the organizers of this convention. It is a very great pleasure always to discuss on how to promote the quality of education. And the initiative is good. And as for the commitment, like Higher Education Council, we really and support the initiative, and we commit ourselves to continue working together to ensure the hub provide all achieve to its mandate. As for this topic, normally the regulator should be able to ensure the employability of graduates after the graduation, their studies. How to do it? First of all, the regulator should be able to set up policies, regulations, guidelines that establish a conducive environment for teaching, learning, and assessment. That conducive environment, of course, will ensure the student acquire relevant skills, competencies that are relevant to the labor market. This can't be done by an institution of education alone. There is a need of inclusivity. When we talk about inclusivity, it means all stakeholders should be involved since the beginning of education. We mean here, we can't leave alone those employers to the education system. They are the one to indicate what are the skills needed, what are the competencies needed for their job. Then when we involve them since the inception of our curriculum, then we are sure we set up the learning environment that will respond to those skills gaps. And as a higher learning institution, we'll take into consideration this, of course, in compliance with regulations, and deliver to that end. Also, there should be effective monitoring and evaluation system to ensure that the relevant skills, competencies that were highlighted by employers are being achieved through the quality of education being delivered, like our colleague said from Inter-University Council. If a student will spend 4 years to the school without achieving the relevant skills that will respond to the market need, it's obvious that graduate will not be employed. So, like I said earlier, we start with good policies, regulations, and most of the time, those policies are there actually. Those laws are there, those guidelines are there. But the big question is to leave alone those employers. And at the end, we like play a blame game. Our graduates are not employed. Employers, your graduates don't have the relevant skills and the competencies that we need. That inclusivity is missing. As part of the Rwanda, we have now started sometimes back, bringing the private sector employers on board. Since from the curriculum development, to ensure the curriculum will respond to identified skills and needs. Also, ensure our higher learning institutions have the relevant expertise in terms of human resource, facilities. This will enable the student to acquire the relevant skills and the competencies. Also, enhance the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, still bringing on board those practitioners, different regulatory bodies, so that as a network, we ensure those graduates have the relevant and the needed competencies for employment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also thank you and also congratulate you upon this marvelous activity that is being shown, and also for inviting National Council to take part. When we were invited, we were asked to indicate pathways that regulators can use to promote graduate employability. And from our perspective, we listed a number. One is to do with ensuring that the accredited programs, the programs that are offered by universities and colleges, follow the national frameworks, because each country has a national framework, as the minister was saying. And in Uganda, we have the National Development Plan 3 and also Vision 2040, and they outline a number of skills that are required for human capital development. And when we are creating programs, we check from the program being submitted by the universities and colleges to ensure that some of the human capital skill needs are demonstrated. We also, secondly, encourage tracer studies for universities to find out where do their graduates go when they leave the gates of the university. And also as National Council, we also conduct graduate study, tracer studies, and for example, we have done the PhD of recent, and also many more in the past. The third pathway would be to ensure that the programs are accredited, to ensure quality, and also re-accredited every 5 years. As the minister mentioned, every 5 years the skills are obsolete. So we ensure that institutions bring their program for accreditation and also re-accreditation every 5 years. We also ensure inclusiveness in the accredited programs, particularly for people with disability, to ensure that institutions are accessible and they can serve all. We also encourage institutions to ensure that when they are creating programs, they consult the private sector so that they can learn what is required in the job market. And also, we ask them that there should be a component of internship, that when they are teaching and also preparing graduates, they must send them out to the field so that they can have hands-on experience on what is in the job market. We also partner with the private sector, particularly the Private Foundation, and we have an MOU with them to tell us what is required. We also partner with the professional bodies, engineers, doctors, medical teams, and so on, to bring them on board when we are accrediting. And we cannot accredit a program unless the relevant professional body has put an input, both in the desk and also in the field. And also, we ensure that the programs we accredit can have mutual recognition all over the world globally, that a program from Uganda can be respected in Rwanda and elsewhere. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. I think as we analyze this session, we have got 3 fundamental questions that we want to add, and many more that will come from the floor. The first part is, what are the barriers to innovative education? What are the barriers to innovative education models and practical solutions in the East African region? Because we have the regulators. So we are going to explore the barriers that prevent innovative education models. The second thing, again, in the analysis that we want to come out in this, how can the regulatory and legal environment be positioned to accelerate regional advancement in higher education in East Africa with regard to improved student outcomes? How do we use the regulatory process to ensure accelerated regional advancement in education to accommodate what we expect now of new graduates? The final one, what ways can education collaborative explore to engage the regional regulators with a view to contribute to the policy environment so that everything that each country would be involved in is based within the policy that cut across and is made for each country so that the graduate we produce in the East Africa region meet the threshold of what is expected in the market. And I know there are more questions that would come from the floor, but we look at it from those 3 points of view. I think then I want to open it for more questions from the floor, but at the end of it, you want to respond to this? Okay.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to respond to some of the questions. I don't know if you'll accept my assessment that tracer studies, stakeholders' engagement are no longer enough. Is that the impression you are getting? Because every time we develop a program, we do stakeholders analysis, we do tracer studies, and yet graduates graduate without employment. So something is really very wrong here. And I may not have the solution right now, but I think there's a need to think about how we do business. We need to change the way we develop our programs and the way we interact with the labor market. Because it seems the labor market is dictating more of what we are doing than what we are producing. And therefore, these are questions that need to come in. But the other question is, where are the jobs? If we produce an MBA today, for example, or a BA education, for example, for which type of jobs? Are we targeting the sectors that are relevant for African economy? For example, manufacturing. I was reading about manufacturing sector is going to double for up to 1.1 trillion in the next 3 years. This is where investment is going to go there. So our graduates should be prepared to go into that niche and be able to contribute to the growth of manufacturing sector. The digital economy is also growing. In the next 5 years, the GDP contribution from digital economy is going to be 5.2%, for example. And it will grow up to 7.1% in the next 10 years. Where are the graduates going to be? Are we going to produce graduates who are fitting into the digital economy, or we will just produce graduates because of our tracer studies? So I think these are issues that comes with the barriers. And we need to diagnose enough of the barriers and be able to address them effectively. For me, tracer studies is, but it's not enough and not effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, these are the questions that we should ask ourselves always when we are into teaching and learning process. Because education is not static, it's dynamic. So this dynamism should go with everything with concern to education. My colleague said tracer studies, need assessment are not only the key areas we should look at, but we should look beyond globally what is the trend of the economic, where economy is going down, is going up, is trending too, so that we strategize our education business accordingly. Also, we have a problem with our designing curriculums. Mostly are knowledge-based rather than competence-based. So having a knowledge-based curriculum will only give that student the knowledge, but not relevant competence and skills to do it. So we should also look at the way we redesign our curriculums to ensure they are competence-based, so that at the end, our student will be able to exhibit some competence. Not only have that curriculum, also look at different competence-based approaches to deliver that curriculum. In Rwanda, we have started from basic education. The curriculum has started in 2009. Of course, having the competent and skilled enough teachers, lecturers to embark on that journey, it's not also something easier. It's a learning process, but we have started that competence-based framework to ensure we have this knowledge. Not only that, also, we should start looking beyond for not general education, but also technical education. We have been focusing on general, but while technical is something which is two way forward: creating jobs, also doing jobs. In Rwanda, we used to have these different institutions focusing on technical education, but recently we have a University of Rwanda Polytechnic, mainly focusing on that TVET education. When we look at today, the achievement made with those young girls and boys in that framework, you can imagine what could happen in 5 years to come if more effort is made there. Then, how the regulator can help in regional enhancement? It's that collaboration network. We have a different network in East Africa for quality, for regulation, accreditation. We are in a way of having those harmonized processes for accreditation of higher learning institution, accreditation of programs. Those sessions are there to ensure we have harmonized framework in East Africa, and that harmonized framework is benchmarked to the international frameworks. This, we hope, will ensure that kind of movement from region to region, country to country, so that we enhance our employability of our graduates. And also, education collaborative can pop in different ways. Number one is this convening. Because some of our institutions in Rwanda locally did not know about the existing, for example, of this education collaborative. Number two, not also higher learning institutions, but also regulatory bodies. So I think with continuous working together, this different interaction will help to look at different ways of existing policies, what improvement can be made to those policies, how about their implementation, so that at the end, we came up with policy not only for teaching, but also for employability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please pass it to Reverend.
In my view, the major barrier are the resources. The inputs and the outputs in higher education are wanting at every level, be it infrastructure, be it processes, be it staffing, just name it. They are just lacking. And we are just working from the standpoint, I'm talking from the Ugandan experience, from the standpoint of improvising and letting it go. So yeah, that we are actually at every level from the Ugandan experience, not seriously with investing what is required for the higher education, for higher institution. And I think that's a serious barrier on the part of education in Uganda. And the other things which we say even are not working, like tracer studies, they are just done as for fulfilling the policy, not to help the institution. You don't find, for example, I graduated from one of the universities in England many, many years ago. I'm still getting literature from that university. I am. 6 months down the road, I was asked to tell them where I was. And every year, they are interested to know what I'm doing. So when we say some of these things are not working, it's because we are not making them work. Honestly, tracer studies work, but institutions from the Ugandan experience, those who do them, they do them to satisfy National Council, but not to help the institution to know that this program produced 15 graduates, only 0 are employed, and therefore we should do something about it. That's not what we are doing. So you find that in many of the instances from the Ugandan experience, institutions do what they do to satisfy the regulator. They don't do what they do to improve their own well-being and operation. We even have experience where people stage manage things You are coming to look at the equipment and this and the other and this and the other, and sometimes you cannot tell how much of this equipment belongs to the institution or whether it has been just stage managed. To the extent that they show you curriculum vitae of people who don't exist on the staff list. I don't know that is the Ugandan experience. So I think that in terms of regulation, if we were to do what we say, it would take us a long way in employability and also improving the quality of higher education. The other thing is that, in my view, where we have the problem, what the regulators can do in terms of the East Africa, I think strengthening the Inter-University Council would be a good idea, because I think the Inter-University Council has done in coordinating the regulators has paid dividends. If that strengthening can be done, I think that would be a good idea. Such that you find that a graduate from any of the regions in the region is as good as from the other. And that would be a big landmark on our part. Thank you.
I want to open it to the floor for questions, and you direct the questions to a specific speaker, and then we move on, so that we can get comments from the floor. Let me stand so that I can see the whole room. Yes? Yeah, please help us with the microphone. Yes. Prof, say your name.
Thank you very much,
Start from there.
Chair. Prof. Gudu. My name is Professor Washington Okeo. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the Management University of Africa in Kenya. My question goes to our facilitator, Dr. Jonathan Mbwambo. And first of all, I want to appreciate the commentaries that have been made. Very, very useful indeed, the work of the regulators across. You mentioned that tracer studies are kind of not bringing up the issues in the curricula adequately that universities ought to focus on. And that probably speaks to the reason why some graduates are not having the requisite knowledge when they graduate. That's what you mentioned, and I think the other facilitators have also said the same. I want to relate this, the fact that to develop a curricula, a university needs to do tracer studies. They also need to do the market survey, which is part of the tracer study is part of that. This takes a period of time. For example, depending on the complexity of the program, this could take maybe 6 months to 1 year. Now, and you mentioned that the world of academics and also the employment market is dynamic or either are dynamic. Now, once this is done, the university has developed a curriculum, then it is submitted to the regulator. This is where my problem starts. I agree regulation is good, but how long do the regulators take before they approve the program? That is where the rubber meets the road for me. So that with that dynamism, there are situations where some regulators could take as many as 2 years before they turn around the program and approve it for a university to start offering it. What happens in that 2 years is that the landscape has shifted, such that even the tracer studies that were done, the information that were obtained, that then became input into the curriculum, have already changed and they become irrelevant. How can we speed up the process of approval of curricula? And how is it done elsewhere in other parts of the world? Because we are not living in a vacuum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will take more questions. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Kwame Novioho from the African Leadership University. Mine is more of a comment and also something to think about. You can respond to it if you want. So I had this experience where we're talking about policy, we're talking about regulation, we're talking about how to innovate and create more opportunities, bridging the gap between the current education and employment. Then we also talk about the government and the private sector. Then I have the question, who is the government and who is the private sector in this case? Because we have a number of students who our goal is, when you graduate, you don't necessarily go look for a job. You create a job for yourself. So a student comes to me and say, my career path is a social media influencer. My mind goes straight to my professor in undergrad. What is that? Are you joking? Are you serious? All right? But I had a deep conversation with this student, and his goal, when he evaluated the number of people and the amount of money they make just by being social media influencers, they don't have degrees, a lot of them, but they make millions of dollars. There's millions of dollars that goes into that sector every year. And in Africa, we have so many young people who actually want to jump on that bandwagon to become influencers. Now, those are the people sometimes I call marketing people, right? But they do not have the degrees for it. So when we think of education as professors, HEC, all the regulators, what do we think of, right? You say accounting, you say business, all of those fields, that is all good and nice. But for ALE, for example, we say a student has a mission-driven education, where what you want to pursue as your mission, it doesn't matter what it is. Whatever you want to pursue. The course is called Global Challenges. It's called entrepreneurship. But it doesn't matter which area you want to delve into. We give you the tools, right, in order for you to be able to pursue that. So if a student, for example, who is interested in becoming a researcher, reach out to HEC and wants to write a paper on how HEC is innovating or how HEC is responding to the vast changes in the education sector. He's not able to have access to HEC because his email reads ALU student, right? There's a conference that is happening at KCC about the Youth Connect. And we try to get in touch with them and say, hey, I have this number of students who have very good papers to publish at your conference. The person who responded to us said, oh, we didn't plan for students to contribute knowledge. We expect people with professor titles to produce papers for the conference. What type of example are we setting? Right? Do we professors or doctors believe even the education that we are giving these students in the first place? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I want to give this opportunity to Access University. I think he is one of the happiest people for his idea is crossing Africa unlimited. Prof, your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to share something that's recently been announced in Ghana and then ask a question. So in Ghana, the Tertiary Education Commission recently announced that as part of the review of academic programs and departments, they're going to require these tracer studies, and they're going to want to see evidence that students are actually gainfully employed after going through a particular program. And if a program has graduates consistently not getting employed, then it will not be reaccredited. This is a major shift that they're proposing to do, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in Ghana. Just wanted to share that. I have a question about the 5-year reaccreditation exercise. And the question is, what are the mechanisms that you put in place to make sure that those 5-year reviews are actually pushing institutions forward into the future rather than bringing them backwards into the past? And I ask this question because sometimes we have departments that experience reviews, and the people who come to review, who've been hired by the Tertiary Education Commission, come and they see something new, and they want you to take it back to what they were doing 10 years ago at their university. And so this, you're doing a program, 5 years later, it's reviewed by a team that comes in, and they're talking about something from the past and making recommendations to the Tertiary Education Commission, criticizing something new you've done, and it becomes a source of sort of debate and discussion and so on before the program is reaccredited. And I'm just wondering, are there mechanisms that you've put in place to make sure that these reaccreditation reviews are actually pushing us forward rather than holding us stagnant or even taking us back?
Thank you very much. I want to allow the facilitators to comment, then we go second round of questions. Yes, we start with you.
Yes,
Professor Mwembo.
yes, Professor Washington, you almost confirmed my worry about tracer studies. And this is because, first of all, why are we doing tracer studies? We want to get feedback from our graduates and employers of the performance of our graduates and therefore be able to improve on our curriculum. That's the purpose of tracer studies. But in Kenya and Tanzania, it takes around 5 years for graduates to secure jobs. So when you do tracer study in 3 years, you will not find those graduates. Who are you tracing? Those are questions I'm trying to ask myself. If they're not employable, then you are tracing them. What do you get? What feedback do you get? So that is the one area that I'm looking at. The second area which I think is important is how do we bring the labor market, the employers into the curriculum itself? When are you only engaging them at the time you establish the curricula, and then you wait for 3-5 years after you've run your curriculum, and then you do tracer study later, or you bring them before? So I think the way to improve, to have a modified tracer study, is to bring employers in the so-called learning-based training, which I think is some of you are trying to do. Bring them to the table and discuss with them the kind of dynamics that are taking place in the labor market. I think that's the way we can improve on tracer study. Otherwise, we may end up tracing what is not traceable, or we may go and comply with the regulators. We tick boxes that we've done tracer studies, we've taken stakeholders meetings, and therefore this curriculum can be reaccredited. And I like the radical change that Ghana is introducing, because I think regulators should come to a point of saying that we are no longer going to accredit this program because, one, graduates are not getting employment, or second, the graduates are overflooded, they are oversubscribed. Why is it that everybody is producing graduates of certain curriculum, while for sure they are going to waste their money? This is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much. I would like to comment a little bit quickly. Prof. Okello said how long it takes to approve the curriculum. Me, I will answer, it depends on how it is ready. Saying, for example, we are talking about this issue of tracer survey market analysis. I will give an example. We receive a curriculum, and you say that the tracer was conducted only for 40 respondents, 10, 20, 30, 40. And when we look at those 40, we ask ourselves, is that sample size representative to 12 million people that the curriculum could serve? So in that case, we are just doing a tracer survey or market survey for the sake of doing it, present to the regulator only. So I think the tracer, if it's done properly, it will inform adequately the curriculum, either development, review, and change. So I think if that program was developed adequately, with clear indication of what the curriculum is going to respond to, I'm very sure that the curriculum won't take long. Of course, with compliance to other requirements. And here, we can't say it's 3 years, 2 years, but in my understanding, a curriculum should not go beyond 1 month to 3 months. But still depends on how it was developed. Number 2, from Kwame from ALU, was mentioning about the collaboration. I think it's about collaboration. If a conference is there, and just you make a call because the conference is there, first of all, we should have that talk with the organizers. Interest them, show them the relevance of that participant. What that participant would bring at an added value. Then with that mutual collaboration, like I said, the inclusivity, maybe they were not aware. They say, you see, then we'll do A, B, C, D. Number 2, you talked about a student accessing information of the regulator. I'm not saying it could be an issue, but still, how that student is going to be involved. Who is the guide, the supervisor, to ensure the adequate communication and the collaboration. So what I mean here is the collaboration, how is done, the approach is done. I would also to comment on the issue of the program review that was raised by our colleague from Ghana. Maybe our reverend will add later. This is in regulation because we have it too in our education law that after 5 years, a curriculum should go under review. But that review is of course meant to improve, not push the institution backward. Because here we should look at this whole scenario as meant to achieve the single goal, which is to have a skilled and competent workforce. Otherwise, we will not still improve. For us, how it is done in Rwanda, we can't wait for 5 years for that review. There are regular assessments. Every year we do it. And those assessments include some called subject review. Subject review is to look at the curriculum which was accredited maybe last year, 2 years ago, with the trend on the market. Then we can advise the institution. Please, this is on the market. Can you see how to improve it? Not even the trend, but also how the curriculum is being implemented. And for us to come the time we suspend the new admission. It will happen. If you are looking at the program implementation, we said, there are no adequate staffing, students are not doing practicals if it is a practical program, then we say, you are not doing the right thing. Suspend admission. Bring those. If you don't do it, then we close the curriculum. There are other institutions that could implement it well to ensure we produce competent graduates. My colleague said something about distribution of the curriculum. You find 10 institutions, all they want to deliver business. So imagine, you ask yourself, are those business graduates relevant still to the market? What are the skills that business is offering them? We understand there are different areas of business, of course, that could be enhanced. That's where the market survey comes. So for this issue of bringing expert, let me say, that's how we call them, to curriculum review with that old age mindset, let me use that terminology, I'm sorry, that old mindset, it's not fair. And it shouldn't be allowed. So I think with that collaboration framework, like I said earlier, could help much. Not only look at the regulator and the institution as enemies, they should work as partners. Thank you.
Yeah, please make a comment.
Yeah, on tracer studies, I think we may be talking about different methodologies. If we are talking about tracer studies being a research project after 3 years, then that's a different matter. But if tracer studies is beginning with a student after leaving the gates of the institution, to be in touch with the institution, that's unavoidable. You can't avoid it if you are going to run a university with a program that needs to be shown to be relevant for skilling and for employability. In other words, the moment the students leave the gate, if we were to be very efficient, there would be someone at the university to keep track of where this student has gone. And those are tracer studies. But I think for us, we maybe conceive of tracer studies as a research project after 3 years. In any case, how would Tanzania and Kenya know that it takes a graduate 5 years to get a job if they are not doing tracer studies? How would you know it? You wouldn't. So I think it is inevitable that we need to do that. Then how long should the regulator take to accredit a program? In Uganda, the ideal is 6 months. But sometimes it never happens not to be. Because accreditation is not a one-way traffic to the regulator. It's a two-way traffic. You submit a program, it's reviewed, and then they point out some of the areas you should address. Now you send it back to the institution, and they sleep over it. And when they are sleeping, the vice chancellor doesn't know that they are sleeping. So he's now calling the regulator. My program is taking ages. Why are you not calculating my program? Bambe, the program is still lying idle at the desk of the professor. So it's a two-way traffic. I think if we all become active, the regulator and the institution, it will take because I would imagine that as Uganda we do, every regulator has a time frame through which the program would be accredited. So I think if both of us could be active, then that would answer the question. Now, how would you make reaccreditation not a kind of zamani, something in the past? For Ugandan experience, it is to involve the active professionals in the trade. And they are, because for us, to accredit any program, we involve the regulatory body, the professional body. Engineers, if the engineers are taking part, there is no way they would be looking for things of the past. If the medical team is going in the past, they wouldn't. So that's how we are bringing that intervention. But at the same time, we all know, and we may be part of the system. Many of us who are taking part in guiding education got our education many years ago. So I think maybe there will be that inertia in it, but I think it can be corrected by peer, because also it is the peer work. Reaccreditation is peer work. It's not the regulators, experts, no, and also professional bodies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We go to round 2. We are remaining with about 15 to 16 minutes. So please make your comments very brief and sharp so that we can get a little more people. Professor Gateru, 1. Professor Maritim, 2. And of course, I may not know you from the distance. Please say your name. Number 3, John Mugisha. Then I come back this way. Please make it very brief. Oh, somebody is at the corner there. Okay, Prof, you're number 4.
Thank you
very brief.
Thank you very much. I'll make it brief. Robert Gateru from Riara in Kenya. As the Honorable Minister was speaking, he challenged us as universities professors to remain on the cutting edge of their professions if they are to train students who are behind them. So just a quick question on how regulators are also remaining on the cutting edge of the sector, so that it's not universities which are bringing radical things, but the regulator is already way ahead of the institutions and is ready for new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. And finally, also in this discussion about tracer studies, etc., where is the student that is coming to join the program? Or do we always assume that the professor and industry and the regulator know what the student needs? We have left the student out completely in terms of determining curricula and accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Francis Mugisha, Cavendish University, Uganda. I've just come this morning. I've just joined, so I have missed a few other speakers. But I want to comment about tracer studies, and I agree with the Reverend Canon Dr. Kagume on lack of tracer studies by a number of institutions. I agree with him on the macro picture in Uganda, and I also see that the National Council for Higher Education, so I know it is correct. There is also a micro picture, and I think as the National Council or regulators, we need to learn from a few best practices, although they are very small, they are isolated. The reason I didn't come in time, I was in Juba attending the Inter-University Council for East African board meeting, and the day I arrived there, through my operations and the team in charge of tracer studies, and our executive director is here, I wanted to see the VC of the University of Juba, and they had organized through our alumni for that meeting. Within 2 hours of my arrival, I had made a discussion, we had signed an MOU. So, and that is courtesy of tracer studies. So at a micro level, there is something going on, Dr. Kagume. Now, you mentioned IUSEA, and I know there is somebody from Inter-University Council of East Africa. I'm the vice chair of the committee, of the executive committee. So I can also tell that there is a focus on employability, and in fact now the focus is on academic industry collaboration, whose aim is to ensure that there is employability, because the gaps in terms of skills come from the industry. And finally, a question to the regulators. Have you considered carrying out a study on skills gaps in various disciplines so as to inform standards for accreditation? Because I think that's what will give us a mileage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a fourth person at the corner there, and then I come now to the middle. Please make it very brief and only one question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dr. Muthe from Mama Ngina University College, Kenya, a constituent college of Kenyatta University. My question goes to Dr. Viondo Dikubumwana. He mentioned something, he alluded something to CBC. And I understand that here in Rwanda, your students already are in the university. And I'm trying to ask myself, was the regulator involved in preparing, one, the professors who are going to teach these students in the university? And I don't want to ask about impact, because if they are in the university, maybe they have not gone to the job market. And then maybe, has the regulator really been part of the preparation of these students as they move over to the university, and perhaps later on as they move on to the job market? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I come to the middle here, and I start with Nathalie.
Thank you. I wanted to make a brief comment. So 2 things. We internally conduct, for any new degree that we're looking for accreditation or that has just been accredited, we conduct an early impact assessment, starting when they start, looking both at academic progression, the skills that they're acquiring, for our students and other students at other universities, to look at progression. We already start that for every degree. And that continues on until they graduate and they're working, and we continue to look at that assessment. And that's our version of a tracer study internally. And we did it initially for our programs that we had a US partner, and now we're about to launch it for our current project management degree. And what that has allowed us to determine, not just in terms of saying that our students are better than, or that they're doing better than average students, it also helps us to understand foundationally what fundamental skills are required. We call them 21st century skills. So we assess 21st century skills, and whether our students within this assessment, the students that are assessed, are actually acquiring these skills as we said that they're acquiring. So already internally, we are self-assessing to say these things that we told the accreditor, are our students actually acquiring these skills? And do these skills that we've assessed and we said they've gotten, do they lead to employment outcomes? So that's an internal process that we run. And we will continue to run that as maybe as a sharing of experience. The second point is, we run a competency-based degree, and I always challenge my colleague Bailey and his team. One of the things that higher education institutions have a challenge is we do not know how to articulate new things. To your point, where we say the assessor, the regulator comes back and he's about to reaccredit your degree, and you have done all these new things, but they're written nowhere. They're not, the people who are doing the program are unable to articulate the change in a way that can be absorbed by policymakers or regulator. And I think that it's a thing that I always, ask Bailey, have we written this somewhere? Is this something that we can deliver as a business case to the regulator to help them understand why this program is important, using data that they can also use when they go back to the government and say, hey, this is something that we should try. And maybe within the collaborative, the East African side, maybe it's something that, whether it's acquiring those skills or whether it's even determining among ourselves how to make these type of cases that would be useful to the regulator in themselves making a case. Because we know that for our regulator, when they were accrediting our degree, they also became, I won't use the word champions because I don't want them to get in trouble, but they were able to absorb what we were telling them, that this is a new thing we want to do. We've done it before, take a chance on us, by better articulating some of the elements of our model. And often higher education institutions, we are lazy. We want the regulator to do all the work. You acquire these 21st century skills and assess us and tell us what to do and then give us this degree. But if we can better articulate, maybe as a consortium, as a convening, as a collaborative, some of these new models, and make sure that regulators are able to have a business case with data that they can take back to the government for accreditation would be useful.
Thank you very much. One more question and then anybody in the middle here? Yes.
Thank you so much for this. I have learned a lot, and I would say Professor Gudu, Dr. Mbwamba, and Dr. Ndikumwimba, and Kagume, this session has really been an eye-opener. But as you talked, this kept coming to my mind. So I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has talked about. It's awesome, and I would give this analogy of, suppose you're working at a soap industry. You know how to do the soap, make the soap, and everything. And you can spend time there. But it's until you take that soap and apply it to your body and wash yourself, you become clean. So take it this way. I've been engaged in curriculum development and everything else. Take it a situation where we've done that, we've done the tracer studies, we've done excellent curriculum. But then come down to the lecturer, come down to the learning activities in the classroom. Are we getting, because if we look at the situation in Africa, what we need critical thinkers. Because for sure, things keep changing. But then as lecturers, let's think, we go to the classroom, learning activities, the projects we give to the students. Is it giving students, are we giving students room for them to think about Africa, think the problems, and that's incorporated into the learning activities. It's incorporated into the projects that we get our students do. Because we can get good curriculum, but if the teaching in itself is wanting, that would not help.
Time is not on our side. 1.5 minutes each. Yeah, please, I start with you, Dr. Mwamba.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll respond to Professor Gateru's comment. I think you'll agree with me, Professor Gateru, that whatever you want to teach today may be obtained by a student from a YouTube account. So the role of a professor is to add value. And that cannot come from a regulator. It has to come from the mindset of the professor. Thank you.
Then we give opportunity to Dr. Kimwana.
Thank you very much. Well, if I would like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, because I will commend it to all of them. I wanted to start with the comment of Nathalie, to use that as an example, how they do business from the beginning. I think this would respond to the issue of tracer survey. And I wanted to combine with the M&E of the curriculum. Because sometimes we have a curriculum accredited, but we don't care on how it is being implemented. This is done at the institutional level. Since the program is accredited, we should start implementing it, but also looking at different challenges. what needed to be improved. For example, if I give an example on our side, we have so far accredited programs, but the institution came back after 1 year of implementation. And they say, you see, when we are implementing, we find maybe this module, it would be better to shift in semester 2. And this module, we find the difficulties for students to learn. This could be, you see, this depends on internal monitoring and evaluation. So we need also to enhance our internal quality assurance mechanism. Sometimes we have those people, but for the sake of being there, we don't empower them, we don't allow them to do their job and give us feedback. And this goes with the tracer studies, involvement of a student, of course. Cost of approving a curricula, well, we know in the region, some regulatory bodies, they request money, but for us, it is free of charge. But also, this free of charge is being abused. Do you know how it is abused? Someone will just copy, paste different things, put it into a document, bring it to you as a curriculum. Because they know it is just free of charge, no cost. So someone who was asking how long it takes, the regulator will go through it, find it as a mess. If it is a French curriculum, you will find somewhere, when we are assessing the knowledge acquired for this English module, why it is French? Because of copy-paste. So that's why I said earlier, let's do our job well and ask others to do their own. Study on skills for accreditation from our colleague Cavendish. This is done regularly in Rwanda if others don't do it, because we work with different stakeholders, development board, even the Ministry of Labor, to ensure we have a set of skills gap. Recently also for us, we have done a study to see the distribution of those programs in the country. Because, like I said earlier, when you have a single curriculum program of business with concentration in Kigali, for example, we don't look outside. Then, do we even have a student to run that program? So it's like creating a boutique with no customers. CBA, how other stakeholders were involved. When this conception was there, all stakeholders were brought on board to ensure we own it. That we started with basic education. And for higher education, of course, when you look at this as it is, it's not something new. Because we all those who have done education, that a good methodology should be learner-centered methodology. And that is competence-based learning. So to bring that just in terminology, it was kind of enhancement. But of course, regular trainings and the workshops to enhance and the awareness are there. The other thing is about teaching strategies, about experimentation. We used a very good example of a soap that you use on your body. I think this is what we have been talking about of innovation. So we need to be involved. Once we are involved, we know what works better. Being involved, it's like going down to the level of even a student. Ask a student, how are you doing this? Is it helping you? Then with that kind of being involvement, it will help. So we are trying. I'm not saying we are doing all at the perfect level, but it's something we need to enhance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We give it to Alex.
Yeah, the student, from the Ugandan experience, it's required that students are represented at the highest policy-making organ of an institution, the University Council or the University Senate. So definitely they take part in these processes of curriculum approval and also accreditation of programs, because they are there. The students are being represented, so that one is being taken care of. The bridging the gap, the skills gap, from the Ugandan experience, the mandate of the skilling and gaps is with the National Planning Authority, not the National not the National Council. But we have made the effort as National Council to contact the National Planning Authority so that we can also be involved. And the landscape is changing because now the National Planning Authority now has grouped what they have called national capital development institutions. And now they are bringing them together and they are calling on us to see how they can be assessed so that we can come up with this. So it's work in progress from the Ugandan experience. Bringing the cost down, the Ugandan side, there is this concern, but the National Council every year gives 3 programs for free to every institution for accreditation. But certainly the cost, and we don't charge any, as National Council, we don't charge any profit on the program. It is at cost. What we charge is what we pay for the reviewers and the people who go. But unfortunately, every year, these expenses are also going up. And the institution is also going to feel a pitch on the increase, but perhaps there is very little we can do about it as a council. Thank you very much.